In 2025, as gaming seems to be inching ever closer to an all-digital experience, and game preservation is at the forefront of a lot of gamers' minds, I'm honestly kinda surprised that we're not hearing more praise for River City Girls Zero, for the creative way it brought a little-known retro title into the spotlight. Though, if I had to guess, that's probably because it's not exactly a fan favorite. Released in 2022 by WayForward, River City Girls Zero is presented as a prequel to the River City Girls series, a successful spin-off of the River City or Kunio-Kun games. And if you were to just go off of the awesome anime opening with its fun and catchy lyrics, the manga cutscene setting up the game, or maybe just its awesome credits tune, no one, and I mean no one, could blame you for thinking that. But the moment you're knee-deep into the actual game, I'm pretty sure that those who went into this one blind, just basing their purchase on the namesake alone, are gonna be a little bit confused and probably disappointed. Especially the players whose sole experience with the River City franchise is just River City Girls 1 and 2. And doubly so if they aren't familiar with the retro. So cutting straight to the chase, in case you haven't figured it out yet, River City Girls Zero was never actually a River City Girls game to begin with. That's right, you've been fooled, you've been tricked, you've been bamboozled! Or maybe it's more complicated than it seems. Maybe, just maybe, this 16-bit game before you wasn't a River City Girls game initially. If you unlock the secret boss fight in River City Girls 1, you might recall this scene.
Yeah, you guys dated them for like one 16-bit game.
It wasn't even released in the USA!
Talk about obscure.
And even if you hadn't unlocked it, the opening cutscene from Zero spells it out clear as day, as it's basically trying to justify its existence here.
Think anyone's gonna care about a 25-year-old game featuring us and our boyfriends? I don't know, maybe if they dress it up a little to feel more modern, like add a new intro, title song, some cutscenes, some new translations. Okay, yeah, I could see that.
No, seriously, that is the entire point of this cutscene. And it knows it. But yeah, this game is a port. A port of the Super Famicom title Shin Nekketsu Kōha Kunio-Tachi no Banka. Wow, that is a mouthful. I'm just gonna be calling it Zero the majority of the time to make things easier on myself. But more importantly, it's so much more than a simple port. And while Zero does add some bells and whistles like extra cutscenes at the start and end of the game, as well as a save feature, good call there, I wouldn't say that really qualifies it for remake or remaster status. Nah. What truly matters most here is that WayForward did more than just translate a 20-plus-year-old game for modern audiences. No, they double translated it. Which is to say, they retconned it. Players have the option to play Zero in its original Japanese form for all you hardcore purists, using the original translation with its 1994 writing for all you retro fans, or you can go with a version where the dialogue has been altered to fit the more modern versions of our heroines with all the writing quirks of today. Meaning that yes, it is much more jokey. But it also gives Masako and Kyoko more personality too, as they didn't really have any back then. Which is important because it helps connect them to the actual River City Girls games of today, since Zero barely features the duo at all. So for now, let's go ahead and put aside all that glitz and glamour that's been tacked on, and instead focus on the classic game inside. Yeah, essentially I guess I'm just starting the review all over again. So with that, hey, it's your boy! Originally released in 1994, Shin Nekketsu Kōha Kunio-Tachi no Banka is a beat-em-up that alternates between arcade style and side-scrolling combat, with occasional motorcycle riding segments thrown in. That really sucked, by the way. And is just one of many Kunio-Kun games, aka River City games, that we never got here in the States. And as such, stars our main boy, Kunio. And not the River City Girls. Just putting that one out there right now. Along with his partner Ricky, the duo have been framed for crimes that they just didn't commit, finding themselves on the wrong end of the law.
I am the law!
And instead of just waiting for the lightning fast justice system to clear their good names, our duo decides to bust out of prison to just do it themselves, letting their fists do the talking. Which is 100% par for the course in River City. But it definitely feels more serious this time around, which is really saying something considering the entire series is a satire of Japanese delinquent culture. Because this time around, it lacks a lot of that goofy charm that most of the Kunio-Kun games bring to the table. Though, the River City Girls rewrite does try to fix that a bit, but obviously, the visual gags are still pretty much non-existent, being replaced with a lot more serious dialogue scenes scattered throughout. Especially if you're looking at the original translation, which, oh boy, that's a lot more serious than I was expecting it to be. It's definitely not as kid-friendly. And I should also point out that all these extra scenes do end up making this a much longer beat 'em up than what was the average for the era. But regardless, it still all just feels a little off. Yeah, you could probably already tell we're dealing with the black sheep of the franchise in like so many ways. With the most apparent being the designs. Gone are the short, quirky, iconic character designs that were, and still are, synonymous with the series. Instead, replaced with more properly proportioned sprites. Which, hey, is fine. River City Girls has proven twice that that isn't a big deal. River City can easily thrive with a different coat of paint. And despite the different appearance, it still looks quite good. Sporting some cinematic cutscenes to go along with the more serious tone, and of course, good old-fashioned Mode 7. And the music, while not lyrical or upbeat like the River City Girls games, is still surprisingly diverse, feeling more like an RPG soundtrack with all its different tones. Some really hit, fitting well with the action sequences, and some miss by a mile. It's definitely interesting for a brawler, to say the least. But either way, even if it looks different from the norm and sounds different from what new fans would expect, it's what's on the inside that counts. That classic River City Kunio-Kun flavor, its uniqueness, its soul, it's gone, isn't it? Yeah, so look, if you're new to the franchise, when it comes to Kunio-Kun River City games, what truly sets it apart from other brawlers, even as far back as the NES days, no, especially back in the NES days, has to be the free-roaming nature of the game. That and its quirky comedy. The original River City Ransom, for example, lets players freely explore the city, looking for opponents to beat down, while making money to be spent in stores for stat-boosting foods and items. Basically, it infused RPG elements, making it into anything but the typical brawler. Which Zero absolutely is. Well, mostly. It 100% follows the traditional beat-em-up layout. Linear stages where the goal of each area is to beat down all of the thugs infesting it, take out a boss, and then move on to the next area to do it all again. But no coins, no RPG elements, and no free roaming. Well, except for these annoying moments, when you find yourself unable to proceed despite the door being right there. Because the enemies just decide to spawn in further back in the room where you've already been. And the cherry on top is, you won't know if you've gotten them all until you can't find anymore. Hold up. Why do I have to go out of my way to find the villain's lackeys? Like, isn't it literally their job to find me? Though they certainly don't seem to have any problems doing so during these motorcycle segments, where it is super easy to crash into a wall for an instant death. Doubly so in co-op when your teammate's attack causes you to lunge. Yeah, we're talking Mario Kart Double Dash style here. Coordination matters. And seriously, what the hell is with this collision? I really can't say I enjoyed these segments like at all, even if they do break things up a bit. Thank God for infinite continues and passcodes. But while we're on the subject of teammates, let's talk more about the standoutish features that Zero brings to the table. Editor's note, so a weird problem that the Steam version of this game has is that if you're using remote play or Parsec to play with friends online, the way the game emulates the SNES game within seems to cause a strange lagging effect that goes on and off. So all of the co-op footage that you're looking at is actually from a fan translation, which is still emulated, but doesn't have that problem with Parsec. So, I don't know, it's weird, but I just wanted to let you all know. After busting out of prison, the boys meet up with the girls and they join forces, making all 4 of our heroes playable. Unfortunately though, it does so TMNT style. And no, not the TMNT you'd hope for. Oh yes, look who's back. At any time you can switch between the characters at the press of a button, each having their own health bars and movesets. But yeah, here's the catch. Despite the fact that they all have separate health bars, you really can't let any of the fighters go down. If the character you're controlling's health bottoms out, despite having other members who are perfectly fine, it's back to the last checkpoint for you. The only exception here is the co-op. If one player falls, well, sucks to be them. They can't take control of any of the remaining characters and are basically just gonna have to sit there and wait for their teammate to either win or die. And really, you should probably plan to die a lot, as it is super easy to take a beating in this game, as it's not really your typical brawler. The combat itself feels like it's really trying to be much more nuanced than it actually is, and it definitely takes some time to get used to and is a far cry from the typical Kunio-Kun River City combat, which is much snappier and way faster. In fact, just button mashing like you can in a lot of other brawlers is a one-way ticket to the continue screen. Zero just feels so much slower by comparison, and that's also including compared to other beat-em-ups of the era. Really, I bet it's those new longer arms and legs that are just holding them all back. It's gotta be it. Every character is rocking a front punch, front kick, back attack, and jump, as well as a standard run, jump kick, jump downward strike, and the guys can actually pin enemies down as well as throw them. But fortunately, all 4 of them can stop a mud hole into downed enemies, which is super useful, though sadly isn't that reliable, as you have to hold down, which can actually result in you moving away from the target when you're trying to stomp them. Kinda sucks. Where things get interesting though, is that you also have a block button, and when tapped slightly before any of the attack buttons, unleashes a special move. The ones that are actually being referenced in the newer games, mind you, and as a fan of River City Girls, it is really cool seeing the original inspiration for the modern day attacks, alongside other references between the games, which does lend to the whole prequel concept here. But the kinda wears off pretty fast once the fists start flying. And doubly so when the specials just don't trigger. Ugh. If you've ever played Double Dragon 2 on the NES, yeah, it feels like that. Thankfully though, the specials don't really feel like an actual requirement in this game, since unlike most beat 'em ups where they just send wave after wave of cannon fodder at you just to plow through, there are far fewer foes here, but they do have a lot more health, making the fights feel much more like a scrape between fighters, which is honestly pretty neat. It's really interesting, but it also makes them all kind of drag on a bit too, especially when it comes to the boss fights. Not to mention, it just gets repetitive way too fast, and it doesn't really help that there are like no weapons or environmental hazards to help spice things up or speed things along either. And again, you can't just button mash at these thugs either, as they will block or start punching back mid-combo. Now, I believe that this is where the nuance really comes in, as the way the game seems to want to be played is that you attack with a normal combo, block the enemy's attack, and once you've blocked, you counter with a special. At least, I think. I can never really get the hang of it, despite the fact that I beat this game 3 times. And each time, especially the ones playing solo, I pretty much just found myself using hit and run tactics, trying to knock enemies down and just curb stomp them to death. Especially with the bosses, as there is no room for mistakes. These guys hit like a truck.
Huh?
Seriously, towards the end, the difficulty spikes are just frustrating. And while I do like what they were trying to do here, the whole slugfest thing, it certainly makes the game stand out from your typical beat 'em up, everything though, it just feels off, feeling much slower and more tedious than it needs to be, and honestly will probably only appeal to a very niche audience. Which, ironically, isn't the Kunio-Kun River City crowd. I can definitely see Zero turning off even the classic fans, let alone the River City Girls exclusive ones. And that is just a travesty into itself. The fact that WayForward not only ported a classic game, but also gave it dual translations to both preserve the classic, as well as retcon it to fit in with the modern series, is just super cool and extremely unique. And I would absolutely love it if other classics that never left Japan got this treatment. Or at the very least got a proper translation as part of a collection or something. Because this idea should not and cannot be allowed to die with River City Girls Zero. And at the very least this game should be held up on that alone. But ignoring that and just focusing on the game itself, well, as a fan of the River City Girls, it is certainly neat to see the origins of the characters, and of course I mean more than just our heroines. But it's just not enough. Shin Nekketsu Kōha, Kunio-Tachi no Banka just doesn't feel like a River City Girls game. It really doesn't even feel like a Kunio-Kun game for the most part. So despite how great Zero is for game preservation, importing, and the like, this probably wasn't the game to give that treatment to, and would have made a lot more sense as an unlockable in River City Girls 3, or a River City collection, you know, something like that. Honestly, it's kinda hard to say. Regardless, for the future of gaming itself, we should all, at the very least, be singing the praises of WayForward for what they tried to do to revitalize a classic in such a cool way. And we should absolutely be encouraging all devs to do the same in the future. So thank you WayForward, and thank you River City Girls Zero.